In the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, Megumi would have tons of hints about his future in relation to his potential strength. Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer of the modern era and rival to Sukuna, would imply to Megumi that he has the potential to reach his strength. He possesses the coveted 10 Shadows technique, arguably the greatest technique in the series, and is easily one of the most tactical fighters in the series. Megumi's potential is usually mocked, but with the recent possession of Sukuna within his body, he is more than likely going to reach these Gojo levels and even has an argument to go further beyond. In this video, I'll be explaining Megumi's strength and abilities, then giving a brief overview of recent events in the series in relation to Megumi in order to help viewers understand that Final Megumi may just be able to reach the levels beyond anything we've seen in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen. This video will be a bit different, as this is going to be more of a this is how strong Megumi will be rather than how strong he is currently. After Sukuna has utilized his body, his overall strength as a sorcerer drastically increasing is almost certain, but since it's only been one day after the Sukuna raid, these effects have not taken place. But judging from Yuji, they will. So with that, let's get into it. Before we get into the final calculation of how strong Megumi should become in the future of the Jujutsu Kaisen world, we should go over the foundation of his character and strength, so we can have a better idea of what aspects of his moveset that Sukuna's possession will be either improving upon or adding to. I'll be honest, I'm not sure where to add the details of how Sukuna's possession affected both Yuji and will affect Megumi, so I decided to add those details right before we get into the Sukuna part of the video, as it'll just be more streamlined and help you guys understand where I'm coming from with this. So now, let's get into Megumi. Megumi Fushiguro sits at the head of the now eradicated Zenin clan as its leader. He's dealing with Naruto type of conditions where he's a grade 2 sorcerer, but obviously sits at levels above that, being able to contest the likes of Reggie Star during the Culling game. Megumi has always been a grade 2 since he started school at Jujutsu Tech, so yeah, at this point, he's certainly above that. Megumi's fighting style is quite similar to Sukuna's, but without the insane strength to back it up. To clarify, this means that Megumi is a fighter who generally plays passive until he can see his opponent's weaknesses and exploit them. Usually though, he doesn't execute the same flawless victories that Sukuna does after using this strategy, but hey, it's still a display of his analytical and tactical skill regardless. It actually even shows that he has some of the best in the series if he's running the same playbook that Sukuna is. He's shown this with arguably two of the most difficult abilities to pick up on in the middle of a confrontation in my opinion, which are Inverse and Love Rendezvous. With Inverse, I don't think you have to be super intelligent to pick up on this ability, but in a situation where you're having an intense fight to the death in the middle of the chaos that was Shibuya, and you need to finish the battle as fast as possible, it'd be hard to actually grasp what was going on, as your brain would be in a state of calculation and patience. As for Love Rendezvous, I don't think much needs to be said. It's easily the most complicated ability in the series. Most readers still have no idea how this ability works, so Megumi successfully employing the wait and see strategy on Kiara and breaking down her technique is telling of how great of a combatant he truly is. Megumi, when it comes to close quarters combat, is a jumping specialist. He's always fighting up close with either his Shikigami or the clones within his domain expansion, or just with somebody else. I think it's no secret that he isn't as strong as his peers in close quarters, but he's still pretty capable despite that. He can also shine when wielding weapons, as he's been shown using a few different ones in the series. He's mostly used a short one-handed blade though. He was also trained by both Gojo and Maki in hand-to-hand combat and weapon usage, so he could be better than it seems. When it comes to endurance and durability, like all characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, Megumi can take a beating. He gets his skull cracked open in almost every battle he's in and continues to fight. He would fall unconscious in the middle of a fight against the finger bearer and get back up soon after, continuing to fight. When trading blows with Toji, he'd get stabbed in the abdomen and walk it off right after Toji would give up fighting. We rarely see Megumi express a ton of distress from taking any pain or damage in the series, despite always taking a beating, so I do think his ability to withstand damage is better than most would think. When it comes to his speed, there's not really too much we can go off of, but I'd say he's certainly relative to characters such as Choso, Ino, etc. before the possession, and he'd probably be able to keep up with the likes of Yuji, Yuta, Maki, Hakari, characters like them, but not on the same level as them. It's kind of difficult to get into this because Yuji himself is connected to almost every character in the cast when it comes to feats like this, but we can never really get an accurate estimate on his power level and stats throughout the series. But if Yuji was able to keep up with the suppressed Yuta during the perfect preparation arc, then I do think Megumi would be able to keep up with the same Yuta after his battle with Reggie, or, be a little bit higher than that. Moving on from Megumi's basic stats, we're going to go over his curse energy related stats, starting with his reserves, or in other words, the amount of curse energy that he has access to. This may sound crazy, but I would say that Megumi is on the higher side of curse energy reserves relative to the cast. He constantly has multiple Shikigami up in battle, can pull out domain expansions right after using these Shikigami and being exhausted in battle, and even when facing against Reggie, he'd use his max elephant that's been stated to use up so much curse energy that he'd rather use it alone. Then he'd use a domain expansion right after, and then he would use a totality Shikigami right after the domain expansion. Megumi does have a lot of curse energy at his disposal. As for reinforcement and output, I'd assume that it's simply average, as nothing has ever been stated about either one of those stats when it comes to Megumi specifically. I would say that you could make an argument about his output being above average because he's been shown to hurt opponents above his level with his Divine Dog totality. Speaking of the Divine Dog, let's get into Megumi's curse technique, the 10 Shadows. The 10 Shadows is a curse technique that Megumi would inherit, with this technique being one of 2 prized techniques of the Zenin clan. It's one coveted by most, and for good reason. The 10 Shadows, first and foremost, allow Megumi to have a decent level of shadow manipulation, allowing him to hide in shadows or store objects within his own shadow in order to pull them out whenever he may need them. This allows Megumi to drastically increase his surprise factor in battle, which is way more important in the context of Jujutsu Kaisen than most battle series. The 10 Shadows also provide Megumi with 10 separate Shikigami to summon using his shadow as a medium. But it's a bit more than this. When one of these Shikigami are killed or destroyed, the power they leave behind will be inherited by others. With the 10 Shadows, one can also merge the Shikigami together when summoning them to create something that resembles all the Shikigami that was merged. For example, Agito. This Shikigami being the combination of 4 separate Shikigami of the 10 Shadows. Another perk to merging shadows instead of using them individually is that they are never at risk of permanent erasure due to destruction. You will still have access to all Shikigami that were contained in the merger in the event that the merger was destroyed. Now, with the foundation of the technique explained, I'll get into the meat of it. Since this video is structured a bit differently, I'll go over the Shikigami that Megumi used here, and when going over what Sukuna has added to his arsenal, we'll readdress the 10 Shadows. This is so I can make the difference clear cut. So before the possession, Megumi had access to 6 out of the 10 Shikigami contained within his technique. First, the Divine Dogs. When summoning this Shikigami, Megumi gains access to 2 dogs, although they're more like wolves that have the ability to track down and engage enemies in battle. They aren't really that powerful though, but after one of these dogs would be killed, the power of one of them would go into the other. This would create Kon Totality. Kon Totality is a strong Shikigami, one befitting of a balanced fighter such as Megumi. It can eat many attacks from, it has massive attack power, clawing through and piercing almost everybody it's attacked in the series, and it can also play a support role like its previous forms could. It's the first Shikigami that all 10 Shadows users have access to, and it's for a reason. Any kind of fighter can utilize it. Next, there's Nue. Nue, when used by Megumi, is a huge bird-like Shikigami with the ability to coat its wings in electricity. Nue can be used in all sorts of ways, such as being a vehicle for flight, allowing Megumi to fly on him when necessary. It can also be used for attack, coating its wings in electricity to paralyze its opponents when striking them. It's also good at eating attacks if necessary. Nue also has a wide range, allowing Megumi to use it for recon. The third Shikigami is Toad. This is a Shikigami that works as more of a support. It can be set on walls, surfaces, or the ground to catch Megumi's opponents off guard with its tongue and restrict them. Or it can be used to grab Megumi or one of his allies and pull them out of danger. The tongue is insanely fast, so the Toad is reliable for the one thing it's good for. After the toad comes the Great Serpent. We've seen the Great Serpent only one time, and it does live up to its name. It's a massive serpent with tons of strength and power, but is only used for surprise attacks as it's summoned by creating a shadow under its opponent and it strikes from there. It's good in unison with other curses, as we saw Megumi combo it with Nue to relentlessly attack Sukuna as the serpent held him in place, but it would be destroyed shortly after that, so Megumi no longer has access to it. After the serpent comes the Max Elephant, this Shikigami being able to shoot out tons of water with very high pressure, or it can just trample its enemies with its weight. It's quite powerful, but it does expend a ton of curse energy. As I previously stated, it expends so much curse energy that Megumi prefers to use it alone, unlike the other Shikigami. Lastly, Rabbit Escape is the last of the 6 Shikigami that we've seen Megumi himself have free access to and experience with before his possession by Sukuna. This Shikigami is arguably the best in his arsenal so far. It allows him to evade any attack that comes his way by summoning a swarm of tiny rabbits that will completely surround him and his opponent and carry him to another destination while doing so. And he's able to do this as many times as he wants. And not only this, it's very difficult to actually destroy this Shikigami compared to the rest. Why? Because you have to destroy the rabbit with the mark on its head. And when this ability is activated, there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of rabbits surrounding you. It's near impossible to pinpoint the correct single rabbit that has the mark on its head, and then actually get the chance to destroy it. Lastly, Megumi can utilize the domain expansion of his respective curse technique, Chimera Shadow Garden. Well, somewhat. He's able to create an incomplete domain by using an enclosed barrier in order to trap his opponents within his own shadow, making the entire space completely black. As of the last time we've seen the Chimera Shadow Garden, it sadly doesn't have a short hit, but it does force its opponents to expend curse energy non-stop in order to reinforce their feat. This is because if they don't, they'll be consumed by Megumi's shadow and fall for what seems to be eternity. This domain also increases Megumi's overall potential to 120%, similar to a Black Flash, while giving Megumi the ability to produce multiple copies of one Shikigami or himself. It's more powerful than you think though, as if Megumi is able to overwhelm you and cause you to sink into the shadows, you will quickly lose consciousness and your fate from there is unknown judging from his fight against Reggie. So it at least has a dangerous effect for the opponent, while also giving Megumi the tools to make it happen. With Megumi's foundation established, it's now time to talk about the final Megumi that will come from Sukuna taking his body and using it for a month and some change against multiple high-level opponents. To elaborate on this a bit, in chapter 258, Kusakabe would explain that, due to Sukuna using multiple special grade high-level Jujutsu within Yuji's body all the times he's taken over, Yuji's body has come to naturally pick up on that, and basically develop all the abilities that Sukuna had used within Yuji's body incredibly fast. With Sukuna being in possession of Megumi's body, soaking it with his own curse energy for more than an entire month straight, and going on to engage in far more fighting in Megumi's body than he did in Yuji's. Compared to Yuji, Megumi's going to see these benefits either faster or get more out of it, maybe both. Throughout the run, Sukuna has firstly been able to obtain the last 4 of the 10 shadows that Megumi could not have access to. First, the Round Ear. This Shikigami serving as a healer that uses reverse curse energy to not only heal its owner, but to negate anything that's reinforced by someone else's curse energy. Second, Sukuna has also managed to tame the Piercing Ox, this being a Shikigami that will charge its opponents with tons of strength. This ox can only move forward in a straight line, but the longer it charges the opponent, the more powerful it'll be. This ox was actually strong enough to push back Yorozu, who is certainly one of the strongest characters in the series. Third is Tiger Funeral, and we honestly know nothing about this thing, so we'll skip it. And last, the 8-handled sword Divergent Seal of Divine General Maharaga. This Shikigami is on its own level, and that may be an understatement. Megumi having access to this thing alone makes him one of the strongest sorcerers in the series. Maharaga has never been able to be tamed until Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history, would do it himself. It first has insane stats for a Shikigami. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly where it stands, but it certainly doesn't hang with Gojo and Sukuna. The general consensus is that, stats-wise, Mahoraga hangs with the special grade sorcerers in terms of raw stats only. Mahoraga is also armed with the Sword of Extermination, this sword being able to one-shot any curse in existence due to its ability to output reverse curse energy. Last and more important, Mahoraga has the ability to adapt to any and all phenomena. You can measure how much progress Mahoraga makes in doing this by the amount of times the wheel on its head spins. It's not instantaneous. Mahoraga has been able to even adapt to Gojo Satoru's Limitless and create a slash that bypasses the concept of space itself in order to counter the Limitless. It's that broken. Also, when Mahoraga completely adapts to a specific phenomena, he will either be able to be immune to it or directly counter it. Yes, the adaptation goes both ways, offense and defense, and it doesn't stop here. When Mahoraga's done adapting, it can continue to adapt in order to find different methods of countering its opponent's abilities if need be. It's one of the most flexible abilities in the series and allows the user to never have a bad matchup when considering the other 9 Shikigami in their arsenal. To make a post-edit note about Mahoraga, as of chapter 270, I don't know if Mahoraga has returned to Megumi's kit, because this can go both ways. Either Gojo has completely eradicated Mahoraga from both Megumi and Sukuna, this making Mahoraga's traits pass on to the rest of the 10 Shadows, which would probably be as broken as having Mahoraga himself, or for some reason Sukuna and Megumi just have 2 different Mahoragas, and Megumi has access to his own since, he didn't get to really use it. Not sure how it's going to work, but either or, Megumi's still going to be pretty busted. Sukuna also, when taming all of the Shikigami, has been able to partially manifest most of them in order to use them while avoiding losing the Shikigami permanently in the event that their opponent destroys them. And he's also able to borrow their techniques himself without manifesting them at all. For example, when he would use the water from the Max Elephant to directly attack Gojo, or bear the burden of adaptation himself when preparing Mahoraga to battle Gojo. This is important because had Sukuna been unable to do this, Gojo would have been able to instantly destroy Mahoraga. Sukuna can actually withstand Gojo's attacks and fight him head on, so preparing Mahoraga this way was the optimal strategy. This adds even more flexibility to the 10 Shadows, and makes it without a doubt the best ability in the series from my perspective. There's also the Agito fusion that he did, which is pretty nice support no matter the situation. There's just so much Megumi can do now with the ability thanks to Sukuna. Speaking of techniques, like with Yuji, Sukuna should have imprinted Cleave and Dismantle onto Megumi. I don't believe that he'd get the World Cutting Slash though, because Sukuna would develop that as an extended technique directly connected to his own. And as we can see with Yuji, sorcerers can have the same technique, but not the same exact technique if they're from different eras or have different mindsets. You could counter my point by saying that Sukuna developed the World Cutting Slash after separating from Yuji while being connected to Megumi, which would be fair, but as of now, we don't really know, and honestly, I don't see Megumi using Shrine much anyway, but hey, it's still something that Sukuna has used multiple times, so it should be within his body. Sukuna has also hit multiple Black Flashes within Megumi's body, the second most in the series right before Yuji. Thanks to this, Megumi should be able to have the ability to somewhat feel these out the same way that Sukuna can, as those who have hit Black Flashes only become better at it the more they do it. This isn't the only physical related boost that Megumi should be getting from Sukuna either, as we have seen Sukuna perform Maki's air step thing multiple times. I'm not really sure how it works because it was never really explained, but this isn't something that's exclusive to the 4-armed Sukuna only, because Sukuna did it when fighting against Yorozu in his Megumi form. You guys share your thoughts on this down below. I want to see what you guys think. And when it comes to conditions and how Sukuna can use it, Megumi, Maki, etc. Sukuna has also casted tons, and I mean tons of domain expansions with all sorts of different kinds of conditions to them. Megumi at the very least should be able to cast a full domain expansion at this point, and this may be a reach, but I'd be surprised if he couldn't do one with no barrier either. Megumi doesn't have the ability to read Sukuna's memories or anything like that the same way Yuta could read Gojo's, so I don't think he'd be able to pick up all the condition swapping stuff instantly. However, Megumi was present and conscious as Sukuna took over his body. He saw everything that happened during the raid, so I do think that he could pick that up later. Megumi will also be able to utilize reverse curse technique, as Sukuna used it 15 times the amount that he used it within Yuji's body. Due to sharing a body with Sukuna as well, he should be able to perceive the soul and heal his own soul if need be. Megumi should also have access to Hollow Wicker Basket and Domain Amplification as well, as Sukuna displayed those abilities a lot during the raid, and Sukuna never even used the two techniques in Yuji's body in the first place if you're wondering why Yuji didn't pick those abilities up from him. The most important of all is something I wanted to hammer in your heads before ending this video. Megumi has always been built up to be a rival to Gojo before Sukuna would take over his body. Megumi was more than likely going to reach Gojo's level without Sukuna, so Sukuna again being 100% active in Megumi's body for over a month has certainly soaked him with tons of his own curse energy. Megumi Fushiguro has become an anomaly of anomalies. And if I had to bet on any one sorcerer being able to surpass Gojo and Sukuna for the long term, it'd have to be him. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. Peace out.